is a third way to own property, and this is going to be a new venture for you. The third way is a thing called a trust. A trust. A trust is a legal device that can own property. You can put anything into a trust. When you create a trust, let me back up and say one thing here. We're going to get into two new words here I want you guys to use that you're going to see the rest of your real estate career. Words that end in OR and words that end in EE. Trustor, trustee, vendor, vendee, mortgagor, mortgagee, lessor, lessee. These words will come forever, all right? OR is the person doing the action. Lessor, that's the landlord. The EE is the one it's being done to, the lessee, that's the tenant. Vendor, vendee. Mortgagor, mortgagee. All right? So a person who writes the trust is called a trustor. Yeah, they're the ones putting the property into a trust. So you've got the trust and the trustor. Guess who runs the trust? You guys have heard this term before, and now you understand why it's that. It's the trustee. They are the ones that are put in charge of running a trust, and you must trust them, hence the word. All right? But the legal owner is the trust. You guys ever heard of a trust fund, baby? That's what this is. Conrad Hilton has two granddaughters. You guys know who they are? Paris and Nikki Hilton, right? They are trust fund babies. When he died, he put a bunch of money in a trust, and there are directions that say on the anniversary of their birth, give them money. That's what the trustee does. You can put land into a trust. It's called a land trust. Used to be called an Illinois land trust because Illinois was the first state that recognized it. Now we all recognize it. It's called a trust. So there are some good reasons to have a trust. All of my rentals are in trusts. So when someone says, Raymond, do you own real estate? No, I don't. The trust owns the real estate. I have the beneficial interest of the trust so that when my trustee collects rent every month for the trust is very nice enough to give me all the money as the beneficiary of the trust. I own multiple trusts. So I'm the beneficiary of the trust. Huh? Until I die, and the way I've got my trust written, then I name secondary beneficiaries. This is one of those things that's a trick, but it's out there for everybody to use. You just got to know how to use it. All right? Do what? Yeah, it's called a living trust. Good point on the overhead. If you create your trust while you're living, it's called a living trust. It's not called a living will. Don't get those confused. A living will is a medical document which says like DNR. And that doesn't stand for the Department of Natural Resources. All right? So do not resuscitate. That's a living will. We're talking about a living trust. If my will that I write creates a trust, like Conrad Hilton's did, that's called a testamentary trust. Testate means you died with a will. That's a legal term. Intestate means no will. So because testate means will, testamentary means my will. When I die, I leave a will that said my last will and testament, I want to create a trust and put money in it, and the other. That would be a testamentary trust. All mine are living trusts. I made them while I was living. All right? But here's the good thing about a trust. The good thing about a trust is it avoids probate. Probate is the legal validation of a will. So if I die owing Josh $10, I borrowed 10 from lunch, and I die, he actually has a legal claim against my estate for $10. He's going to go in and go, hey, I want $10 from Raymond's estate because he owes me money. My executor of my will is going to say, sorry, Josh, Raymond has no money. Well, yeah, he does. He's got those 6 or 7 rentals. No, he doesn't. He doesn't own those. Trust owns them. So I died leaving Josh one big... Trust owns them. I don't. All right? So that's the reason people put stuff into trust. So here's the other cool thing. If the beneficiary, which is who? Me, dies, my trustee has orders to quit claim deed the properties to my secondary beneficiaries, who are who? My kids. That is not an inheritance.
Does that mean that it's subject to...
It's not subject to inheritance tax because it's just a quit claim deed from one owner to the other owner. Has nothing to do with me dying.
But then it's not separate property.
It's not separate property.
So like if they get married, does their wife or husband have interest in it?
It would be separate. Well, it wouldn't be for Brandon because he's already married. But my other kids aren't married. They would inherit it. Well, it's not inherit. They would take ownership of a property prior to being married. The key that I'm getting at is when you die, you leave properties to your kids. That's an inheritance. That's subject to inheritance tax. In a trust,
Beneficiary, they're not an inheritance.
that's exactly correct. They're a beneficiary of a trust.
So, but when they get married, how does that property...
It would still be separate property.
Oh, okay. Even though it's not inherited property.
It's still, so whatever I bring to the marriage is separate property. All right? Like my house. It would be the same. If I left the house to Ian, he would own it before, and then he gets married, he brought it to the marriage. All right? So it would be separate property for him. All right? But that's not an inheritance because I avoided probate by going through the trust. Unless he gets refinanced and married. There are a couple other business organizations I want to talk about real quick. There's 3 major ones. There's a corporation, there's a partnership, and then there is a LLC, which is limited liability company. All right, LLC is a limited liability company. Partnerships involve 2 or more people engaged in the business of making money. The general partner makes the day-to-day activities, runs the business, but is fully on the hook for any potential problems. A limited partner does not participate in the day-to-day activities of the business, but their exposure is limited in legal suits. So here we go. Watch this. It's a visual joke, and for the people at home, they get to miss this. Thumbs up for the general partner. Thumbs up is I make the daily decision. Thumbs down is I'm on the hook. So we get sued for a $12 billion because my thumb up was I made the decision. I'm on the hook for $12 billion as one of the partners. All right? Now, here's the advantage. Limited partner. Thumb down is I don't get to make decisions. I wanted the building to be painted blue. He wanted it green. It went green. The thumb up portion for the limited partner is I only put $200,000 in this deal. My exposure is $200,000. I'm limited on my exposure. So it's a thumb up, thumb down kind of deal. General partner's thumb up is I made the decision. It was my fault. I'm on the hook. The limited partner said I didn't make that decision, so I'm limited. I'm still on the hook for some, but not the full amount. That's the advantage to partnerships. You got a general partner and a limited partner. All right? Corporations, there are 2 types of corporations. There's the C Corp, which is an artificial person. That's the big Mama Luca. That's the McDonald's and Windows and Microsoft and all those guys. Then there's a smaller version, and think smaller, you would say sub S, a sub S corporation. There are some rules about being on sub S. Typically, most of you guys are going to start out doing sub S kind of stuff. All right? The school is a sub S corporation. I have the corporate, it's Real University Inc., doing business as Real University, subchapter S. All right? The good thing about a sub S is it flow-through entity, meaning the school makes no money. All the profits flow through to the owners, and they flow through in whatever portion we own. If I own half, I get half the profit, or half the loss, depending on how good the school did. All right? Very similar is the LLC. Same thing. It's also a flow-through entity, but it still has the limited liability of a company. You can get taxed like a partnership. LLC is like a cross between a partnership and a sub-S corporation, basically. It's the easy way to think about it. The difference, the major difference between an LLC and a sub-S, you can disproportional the money over the ownership on an LLC. Miguel and I could half own it, but I get 80% of the money. He gets 20% because I work here every day and he does another job and only fills in. On a sub-S, if I own 80% of the stock, I get 80%. There's no way. LLCs are more fluid in how they pay out, and ownership can be different. All three of those are seen as an artificial entity, which means they own property, how? In severalty. Even though you get a big C corporation like Coca-Cola, run by a board of directors, has a president, all of that, millions of shareholders, when they go buy real estate, they buy it as Coca-Cola Bottling Inc. in severalty. One person. Even though that one person, finger quotes, is guided by all these millions of stockholders, the property is owned by one artificial person in severalty. Partnerships can do that. LLCs can do that. All these people, because they're artificial people under the eyes of the law.